The book we're talking today, Life is Like That Sometimes. Absolutely fantastic collection of short stories, some just a page long. The whole arc of your life, totally captivating.
I felt like I needed to write after I lost my brother, my mother. The moment you ask her to tell a story, she just comes to life. And I think I inherited a little bit of this from her. My family home, the homestead, was just always busy and buzzing. The moment you said your name, you must respond and say, "Dad, I'm cool!" Says, "Khaya, what's going on?" And I just broke down and I told him. While I was in that process of writing this book, I lost my mother and then I just stopped writing. I was like, I can't.
Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club. I'm your host, John Bradshaw, and we've got a great show for you today. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter at www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za to always be the first to hear about reviews, interviews, and get great discounts on the books we cover here. And now for the show. It is my great privilege and pleasure to introduce Khaya Dlanga as our guest today. Khaya is a multi-award-winning marketing executive. He started on the agency side. He then had big roles at Coca-Cola, Heineken, Rain. He was the CMO at Rain. Then went back to the client side as now the managing partner at growth consulting EatBigFish. But he's also one of my favorite authors. And so he's written 5 books, of which I have 4 of them here. 2012 was In My Arrogant Opinion. That's hard to get hold of.
It is.
2015 was his first memoir. To quote myself, brilliant book. These things really do happen to me. I like the evolution of the pictures as well on these. You look so young and innocent there. Then the COVID one.
Yes,
it's the answers for me. All the responses to you on social media. And the book we're talking today, Life is Like That Sometimes, which is a absolutely fantastic collection of short stories, some just a page long. Every story is magical, but the whole arc of your life from the small village in the Eastern Cape to where you are as a high flyer in Joburg is totally captivating. So a huge welcome to you, and it's wonderful to have you here.
No, thank you, Lord John Bradshaw.
No, we need to behave.
Because I'm thinking that John Bradshaw sounds so aristocratic. It's like, it doesn't sound like, I know you're saying that, you're probably working the fields.
Yeah, I was definitely working the fields. My forefathers. No, actually the name is interesting because it's a litmus test. People either say, "Are you related to Carrie Bradshaw?" And then Sex and the City, or they say, the wrestler. And then they're into WWE.
Was it John the Hawk Bradshaw? No? What is it?
It's John Bradshaw Lafayette.
John Bradshaw. I think I remember that guy.
Yeah. So the book, this book, clearly it's it's a huge number of stories. It's an incredible collection. So it must have been a huge effort to write. What drove you to write this book? Why did this book have to be written?
It was interesting because there was I felt like I needed to write after I lost my brother, and I think it was just like to get away from thinking about that. But what my publisher kind of wanted me to do was for me to write a book about grief, and then I said I can't write a book about grief. I'm just not there, and I wouldn't know how to write about grief. So it's not in me. It's not like I am. Who wrote the screw tape letters again?
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis. I was like, I'm not C.S. Lewis. Who is probably considered to have written the greatest book on grief. So I was like, it's not me. So I'll just write about my life, and I'll find that. And while I was in that process of writing this book, I lost my mother, and then I was like, and then I just stopped writing. I was like, I can't. I can't do this. And my publisher very kindly stopped sending me emails and asking me about my deadline.
Compassionate.
Compassionate. Which is, and it's the only time in history that that's ever happened. They're like, okay, they held back until I was ready. They didn't even ask me when I would be ready. And that's what really compelled me to write the book, really.
Yeah, because it is. You can see even from the early stages, you clearly by the end of the book, you get to your brother and your mother's passing, which we'll talk on. But there are plenty of bittersweet moments in the first half as well. Your mother, Nongeba, she was an incredible storyteller.
Oh, she was great.
It comes out in the book. What made her story so compelling?
You know, I don't, it's interesting because sometimes a story is not necessarily compelling because it's a compelling story. It's because of how the person's telling it
It's
makes
the
it
telling,
compelling.
yes.
Right. And that was just my mother. She was just like this. And because in many ways, she always seemed like this reluctant storyteller.
Oh, stop. Hold me back.
No, I won't. Okay, fine, you know,
Fine.
I'll tell the story. And the more she got into it, the more animated she got and the more descriptive. And she was also like quite funny, you know. And I think that's what made her a very compelling storyteller. And she was, you know, and I think I inherited a little bit of this from her. And verbally, I'm not very good at describing concepts or ideas and all of that, but I can tell a story.
The narrative.
Right? The narrative.
Yeah.
And she was kind of like that. So if she was trying to describe a concept and she just go left and right and like, what the hell is going on? But the moment you ask her to tell a story, she just comes to life.
Incredible. And she was also the woman wearing the pants.
Yes.
In the story.
Oh.
So it seems like she was a strong, independent mind in a context that
Yes.
couldn't have been easy to be there.
Oh yeah, it was. I definitely don't, because it was a very conservative. I mean, you know, Eastern Cape villages, despite the very progressive people it tends to, you know, they tend to produce, there is also a lot of conservatism there, and I imagine what even I can think about, you know, Winnie Mandela, who is probably maybe one of the most famous Xhosa women, you know, in history. She was also quite liberal, I think, as a person. But I do imagine her, if she was going back to the Eastern Cape, she'd probably act like a traditional wife, a traditional woman, and, you know, a woman is not in the crawl, she's in the kitchen, and, living these dual lives.
These
and so
multiple ways
of being. And I think that with my mother, with the pants, the story that you're telling, it just reminds me of, like, in her day, the e-commerce, which was getting a catalog. So she'd get this catalog, and from her sister who lived in Durban, and she would then pick the clothes that she wanted, and then she would send them to wherever they were sending.
There was some place that
yeah,
did
some
the post
place,
office work.
Yeah, and then the package would come, buying where she bought pants. Women just didn't wear pants in a day. It was just like taboo. It was not even a thing that was considered. And I think you're probably accused of being like a prostitute and and things like, and a woman of unsavory character. And so there's a story she told me of how she would, like, late at night or early hours of the morning, she'd wake up if she was going to town. So she'd wake up in the village, my grandfather's house, take her pants that she'd bought from the catalog and hide it, you know, in the garden somewhere, so that when she leaves, and then she'd pick it up and walk to town. And she'd go to town, and this is the funniest thing. She'd go to a Catholic church and she'd change into the pants because she had a friend who was in the Catholic church, change into pants, take pictures in the Catholic church. Or outside the Catholic church, of herself looking stylish. Once she was done, you know, go back to her conservative clothes and put them in their little bag, and she'd go back home.
I love it. So it wasn't just the rebellion of pants; it was also a style.
Exactly.
Your style icon.
No, she loved style, and I mean, if there's one thing I usually remembered about her when I was like a child, these memories that I had of her, was always this incredible, because she didn't live with us, and because she left us as children, because she worked in East London, and we were in Mount Aleph, and so she saw us about once a month, and she'd always come as this incredibly gorgeous, beautiful woman with this long nails, and I remember seeing her as a child and thinking, wow, if I touch this woman, I'll make it dirty.
Wow.
Literally. And this was the feeling that I felt.
Such
Yeah.
an amazing impression that sticks with you. Well, you mentioned your grandfather, key part of growing up, and sort of a huge character in the story,
Massive.
Alfred Kaiser Boyce.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about
my goodness.
this pillar of the community?
Oh gosh, Alfred Kaiser Boyce. I always make this joke and say that if someone were to see his name, Alfred Kaiser Boyce, back then, they'll think that is some white guy.
Yeah, I mean, Kaiser's not super, like, that name's,
Yeah, I know, right? So, Alfred Kaiser Boyce, and so he was this incredible character who, I mean, he ran, in many ways, he ran the economy of the village, because every single cow in the village had to be registered with him, because I forget what his role was. We'll call it in Xhosa, not deep.
The keeper of the records.
The keeper of the records of the deep and all of that. So every single, when a calf was born, you had to go and record it. You registered with him. If a cow died, you had to let him know. If you slaughtered it, you had to let him know. And there was, I forget the name of this thing now, but anyway, so, and he ran the deep to make sure that the cows were healthy.
Yeah.
And not just the village. There were, like, I think, the 4 surrounding villages. So he was recording all of those. And so this meant that he was in contact with almost everybody.
Yes.
And so everybody knew who he was in the community. And because I think of his fairness and how strict he was, a lot of people kind of would come to him for guidance as well. And so my family home, the homestead, was just always busy and buzzing with people either looking for my grandfather or looking to talk to my grandmother. I mean, there is an incredible story where it's a legendary story where one of my uncles, but not direct uncles. I mean, I don't even know how I'm related.
Uncles.
I don't even know how I'm related to him.
That's a South African thing, not just a Xhosa thing.
Yeah, it
it's
is
the uncle,
definitely. So now we share. He shared the same surname as my grandfather, and his wife reported him and said that, like, he beat her up, and so a trial obviously took place. Well, not obviously, but he was also like the judge of the family affairs, because are very extended and large, which was the tribe of the Snama, so the Snamas. So this one time, so everybody who had something to say and observe the case sat around to kind of listen, to the case. So my grandfather would sit right in the middle, like this stool in the middle, and everybody kind of formed a V shape. And everyone had something to say, would stand up and make whatever case they're to bring, either for the defendant or for the accused. And apparently the legendary verdict that my grandfather, I was like, okay, well, first of all, the neighbors say that they heard you arrive late at night shouting at your wife. Then you hit her. When you got tired of hitting with your hands, you picked up a sjambok and you beat her up with a sjambok. And the neighbors arrived, and clearly we can see the evidence that you did beat her up. And clearly you are very good at beating up women, and people are smaller than you. So I have decided, this is my verdict, that I'm going to get the biggest guy in the family and the toughest guy who's bigger than you, for you guys to have a fight so that you can see what it's like. But obviously the fight was not going to happen, in the homestead. They took them far away to some veld, and obviously the guy stood no chance. He got, beat up properly by this, by this family member who was well known for being a tough guy. And he never beat up his wife ever again. And from that day, people in the village, apparently, when women were beat up by their husbands, they'd go to my grandfather.
It's incredible. I mean, there's so many stories. There's also the story of where he plays judge over the stabbing. The stabbing incident. So there's that. There's the cow home affairs type thing.
Cow home affairs.
Like that is obviously not something I fully understand. But for me, one of the things I love is that he wanted you to run everywhere.
Oh my goodness, my
you can't be walking somewhere to do an errand.
Yeah, oh, you can't. And this was the thing about him. Like, you had to, And I think it was a way of creating like a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
That like not just maybe urgency, but agency as well, right? And when he called you, you couldn't just say, we'd say Tatom Cool, right? You couldn't just say, you couldn't wait and be like, Tatom Cool. The moment you said your name,
you must
respond and say, Tatom Cool! And run to him, right? But also, no, you didn't just run. You had to grab your stick as a boy and run with him, to him with your stick. And you had to stand at attention with your stick like this while he was addressing you and talking to you.
Ready for instructions.
And the moment he gave you instructions to go wherever, you had to run.
Yeah.
So, but he was quite a character, my grandfather.
No, it's incredible. And I feel like we could spend the whole podcast talking about him. Bayabili, the horse. I love that. So this is a part of what I love in your writing, that you just describe in very personal and nuanced ways a world that I have no first-hand experience of and could never get first-hand experience of, because as soon as I'm there, it changes the dynamic, and that's very precious to me. There's a later part of your life where you go to a Model C school, of what used to be called Model C. I think they've rebranded. But this was a fantastic insight for me, because I was on the other side at a Model C school in Cape Town, and it was only years later when I looked back that I realized how differently all the boys coming from different contexts. I was just a stupid 14-year-old.
Yes.
So I love that part of the book with you talking about getting up at 4:30, going. Maybe talk a little bit about what it was like. It was Hudson Park.
Hudson Park in East London.
In East London.
The Ndungwane brothers, this former Springbok players, went to Hudson, just to say.
Every school's got that one, but he played underwater hockey for the Springbok. Every school's got one. That must have been a huge shift. You had been to a few different schools, but that must have been a huge shift in your context. What was it like?
No, it was a massive shift, because number one, so it was not only just a shift, I think, for me, but it was, funny enough, a shift for the community that I came from, because they had never seen. So I'd be walking from school, this is even primary school, walking to school or from school, and they would see my school uniform, and they'd be like, that uniform belongs to white people. Literally. And they'd be like, this is like in the township, I'm Tanzania. And they'd ask me like, so, do you go to a white school? And they'd be like, yes, I go to a white school. So this is 1991. I was like, you go to a white school? Yeah, I go to a white school with white people. Yes, yeah. And then they'd be like, so are you in the same class as the white kids?
Yeah.
And yes, I'm in the same class as the white kids. And they're like I at the back. No, I sit like with everybody. And during break, do you guys play together? Yes, I play together with the white kids. And they were like, no, man, I'd literally be surrounded. I'm not even joking.
Tell us what it's like.
The fascination, and these are grown up. It's not kids who are asking me these questions. And then they'd be like, so can you speak English? And then I'd be like, yeah, I speak English. And
on.
And then they'd be like, okay, speak English then. And then I have to start making.
And then you'd have to start telling stories
in English. But then in the school, so I suppose the big difference was how early I had to wake up, to go to school. I'd wake up very early, like 4:30, take, a bath, because my mom had to boil water in a paraffin stove, and you wash in a little basin, in a little vascom, and I'd have to walk to the train station. Like it was, the walk to the train station, I think was 40 minutes, 40 minutes, and get to the train, which was like absolutely packed.
But cheaper than the taxi.
Significantly cheaper.
Right.
It cost 10% of the price.
Okay.
Like for the 10% of the price.
So worth the 40-minute walk.
Yeah, it was worth it. But I never told my mom, so she didn't know.
So it was income generating.
Because I was like, I need the money. And then get off the train station and walk another 30 minutes to go to school. So this was this daily thing. By the time it's 11 o'clock, you are just exhausted because you've been out for so long. So yeah, it was interesting, but I also found, I didn't find my schooling experience that, maybe because I was younger, and also I think Mr. Prentice was my principal in the primary school. I feel like was very
Was that
deliberate.
Little Flowers?
No, this is Hudson Primary.
Hudson Park Primary, okay.
And Mr. Prentice, I think the term before, I feel like he trained those kids so well. Like the
So
principal.
he prepared them
He
for
prepared
the
for
world's
them.
going to change.
The world's going to change, but not only that, he probably told them he's not going to tolerate any nonsense. And for the first term, if I had to tell you that I didn't bring lunch to school because everybody was either buying me lunch or bringing me lunch.
Yeah.
It was just incredible. I didn't have to bully anybody. They were bullying each other to give me their lunch.
I think and it comes out in the book, there are 1,000 micro heroes in South Africa's history.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was only 25 years ago
That is
that
insane.
you were going back to your community and they were saying, in the same class.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Actually, now that you mention
this
that,
is
that
only
is
half a life. And so there are heroes like Mr. Prentice. There's Mr. Friend in the high school.
Mr. Friend.
Who calls the other school with the bullies on the train and
Yes.
sorts them out. Like,
Yeah.
just all these little guys that are kind of forgotten to history, that just in their small actions were just meaning that the 90s, the 2000s,
Yeah.
actually South Africa made this miraculous change.
You know, funny should mention this because there is a story, but I think it's in another book, where Darren, another boy that was in my class. So some boy in the one class took like Tipex, right? There was no teacher in the class for some reason. So he kept taunting me. Like he kept taunting me, but I was not responding to him. And I'm the only black kid in the class. And then took the Tipex and he mocked me like, on my arm. And he said, "Oh, you think you're white?" And so I ignored him. And it's like, I'm talking to you. You think you're white? And I ignored him. And then he calls me the K word. So I get really mad. I jump and I try to lunge at him. But the other kids kind of hold me back. And I'm just furious. I'm so angry. One kid grabs me. I don't know who's grabbing me. Grabs my arm and drags me out of the class. And then I'm thinking, great, he's going to report me. And yet I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm crying. And while we're walking, he says his name is Darren Lands. And Darren says, we're going to report him. And I was like, God, what? I did not expect that. And Darren marches with Mr. Mr. Prentice's office. He knocks, does not wait for an answer to say, come in. He opens the door and pushes me in. And Mr. Prentice had a meeting at the time, and obviously sees I'm distraught. And he ends his meeting, finds out what is happening, and I told him what happened. Asked Darren to go and call the guy. The guy came back, who would call me the K word, and he said, Khaya says that you call him the K word. And he said, no, I did. So I call him Khaya a liar. And he says, no, sir. So did you call Khaya that? He kept quiet. The guy is Portuguese. And he said, do you know what Portuguese people are called when someone wants them to feel small? And he said, yes, sir. Would you like Khaya to call you that? Or me to call you that? And he started kind of like tearing up. Said, no, sir. And then he made us shake hands and we became good friends.
That's
so we had there were these little
things. But I also think when I see that Darren, right, we sometimes talk about privilege or white privilege or the privilege when you have in power. That little bit of power that Darren has in this moment, that he has the confidence to knock down the headmaster's door.
I know, right?
It's the game changer.
That is very true. I always remember that. It's incredible.
Acts of bravery. Well, I'm wanting to move us forward. I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay.
Because our lives interacted a little bit. I had lots of friends at Jubilee Community Church. You came down to study at Red and Yellow. And I think this is to quote myself, the story of when you went to Red and Yellow.
Triple A.
Triple A?
Yes.
Sorry, it was Triple A, the advertising.
Yes.
And you ended up, do you want to talk a little bit about that season of your
Oh, that was crazy. So, I because long story, but I lied to get into the Triple A.
You advertised?
Yeah, I advertised myself to get into the Triple A. And eventually when they asked me when they accepted me, they said, okay, how are you going to pay? Because you said your mom doesn't work. And I was like, well, my mom has these cows in the village that she's going to sell.
And they were like, cool.
Okay,
Right?
cool. And they let me. But then during my second year, like everything ran out because it was very expensive. And I became homeless. I literally had no place to stay. And because I had no place to stay, I mean, even before that, I was forging train tickets to ride, you know,
Just to get
to, you know, to the AAA. But so I literally, the digs I was playing at, everybody staying at, everybody moved out. And I think it's because they were carrying me, you know, and, you know, shame, which has, so, and then I stayed in this apartment that was being renovated. And one day these guys arrived very early while I was still sleeping, the workers. And I had to run out of that place. And I didn't know where I was going to stay. And eventually I decided I'm just going to have to sleep on the desks at the AAA.
At the AAA, wow.
And then I was sleeping on the desks at the AAA. And when everyone was asking me what's happening, I said, guys, the deadlines, right?
Working late.
But there was an incredible time because I used to be a youth leader, if you will. I was helping out actually with youth at Jubilee every Friday.
A church and observatory.
Yeah, a church and observatory. So now he took me. So this one time, Alistair Buchanan, who was, I think, responsible for the youth. So I think it was 2 Fridays in a row where he was dropping me off in town on a Friday at 10 o'clock. And then this one Friday, he says, Khaya, why am I dropping you off on a Friday at 10 o'clock in town at college? And then said, wow, like the deadlines are so crazy. He says, Khaya, what's going on? He literally looked at me, and then obviously because he was looking at me and I could tell he was demanding the truth. And I just broke down and I told him, and I was like, well, I don't have a place to stay. He says, why didn't you say anything? I was like, what else am I going to say? Like to who? And that very day, he let me get out that night actually of that place. I had to grab my little bag that I had, and he let me sleep in his house that day. And the following day, he called a couple. I hate the fact that I can't remember their name. That I was recently married. Literally, I think they'd been married like 3 weeks before or something like that. And I was staying with them for about a week. And I remember that was the first time I've had muesli in their house. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then after that, he called the YMCA, and the church helped me. And I stayed at the YMCA for a month while looking for 2 months while I was looking for a job. And I got a job at the River Club at the time and driving range and as a waiter. And I started making enough money to start paying for myself.
I mean, I love that story so much because Alistair Buchanan could have so easily not asked the question. He could have wondered about it, but it's the kind of question that gets an awkward answer that is going to require action.
Exactly.
Right? So
and he was
asked him the
prepared, I
question. He was
suppose.
prepared for the awkward answer because it was going to require actions from him.
I love that.
So it's extraordinary. We'll do some research and find out. We'll put our researchers on it, and we'll find out who the family was. I just love that. Such a practical compassion in that moment that ends up just being a little inflection point. Another little
and the fact that couple was just married and they said yes, that is insane to me.
Yeah.
And I think I always felt so guilty that I was, and I know maybe they never expected me to give back anything, but I've always felt like, you know, maybe somehow I needed to say thank you to them somehow, and I've never been able to, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's look, I mean, there's so many funny stories in here, but the book really has a transition as it goes through. As you spoke about at the start, how you stopped writing for a while, and really feels like then you started processing your grief and the tragedy of your brother and then your mom's passing. But it's an incredible gift to us because of the honesty with which you tell the story, the vulnerability you talk about your own feelings of guilt and therapy. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your brother, because it's it's a terribly tragic story, which made me like it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Also made me really angry because some of the external factors
Yes.
that were at play in your brother's
Yeah.
passing.
Yeah, so that was a crazy, because with my brother, I mean, I was having a good time, in the States, not just in the States, I mean, in Bel Air, living the life. So, and it's great. I'm having the best time. And then when I got back to my place in Cape Town because my brother had moved in to live with me. And he was actually working at Catch and Release, which is the in-house agency for Rain, where I was CMO. And when I got back to my place, I realized that, wait a minute, I've got a whole bunch of missing items, electronic goods.
Where's my PlayStation?
Yeah, where's my PlayStation? Where is my this? Where is my that? And so my brother said, oh no, while you're on holiday, I was staying at a friend's house and he doesn't have certain items. So I took them to his place, but he's gone to the Eastern Cape and he's going to come back in 2 days' time. I don't think nothing of it. I wait 2 days. 2 days turns into 3. And I said, but your friend, where was my things? He said, no, he's still in the Eastern Cape. Okay. And then the third time, I was like, but Nganga, what's going on here? And he said, no, my friend is in the Eastern Cape. And then I said, okay, fine, listen. I'm going to give you a deadline because that was almost like 10 days. And I said, this is my deadline for you. If I don't have my things by 12 o'clock on Friday, I'm calling the cops. But then I said, actually, just wait. Tell me, are you in trouble? Like, is there something wrong?
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm fine. No, there's nothing. I said, Nganga, are you sure? Are you in trouble? I said, no. I said, okay, shut up. If I don't have anything, by 12 o'clock, I'm calling the cops. And then at 11:30, he kind of gives me a call and he says, can we meet? Great. I meet up with him in the boardroom. And then he says, what I'm about to tell you is the worst possible thing in the world. And I felt like what he was telling me, I was like, I think he's priming me for something. He wants me to think the worst possible thing. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, it's drugs.
It's drugs,
I was
murder.
like, it's drugs.
Like, what is
this is what's happening. Oh Lord, what is he gonna tell me? And then he says it's the worst possible thing, and he says he's got a gambling addiction. And then I was like, I actually had such a relief when I found out.
Yeah.
When he told me this. I said, okay, great. At least now we know.
Now we know.
And because we both know, we know we can do something about it. So thank you for telling me. But here's what I'm going to do. Because you're working in this office, I am going to tell your boss and I'm going to tell my boss that the founder of Rain, and I'm going to tell so that if things start going missing, I don't want people to start wondering. And it's you, like, office computers and all of that. And I don't know anyway, eventually he says, okay, fine, I speak to Craig and Brandon, and they both then say, I mean, incredibly generous of them. They talk about the fact that in their own families that people struggle with certain addictions. And I said, the one thing they have to do, just tell the truth. That's all you have to do, just tell the truth. And they would support him, would help him go to rehab and so on. And then he actually started getting back on track. And then he, on 2 occasions, he kind of like backslid into it and didn't tell, the truth. And had to threaten, to kind of get him out of my place. And so I'm trying to jump into parts. But anyway, the one part that was very, very difficult when, I had to fire him, sit him in the boardroom and tell him that, okay, because you've lied now the second time, and you've also sold company property. So, yeah. And then after firing him, myself, Brandon, and, and Craig, and he got up and he walked out. And then Brandon was like, I really do think that you should probably just chat to him, Because we lived close to my work. It was a 7-minute walk. So I literally ran after him. And I had to tell him, like, listen, this is because I love you. You know that I don't hate you. Nobody hates you for this because it's an illness. Like, we can't hate you for it. And we're going to fight this, you know. And once I got to my place, I got him to call my mother and to tell my mother that I've had to fire him because he's, been stealing. And he's had this gambling addiction, which I didn't tell my mother about, by the way. And now what was even worse was like, I can't allow you in my place because I can't trust you. The only time you can get back inside the house is if I am in the house. Oh, no. And can I have your phones? Because you use them to gamble.
Yeah.
And then he gave me his two phones. And and then I told him, after a few days or weeks, I basically said to him, you will have to tell me when I can trust you again with your phones, because I'm not a prison warder, and also the keys so you can get into the house. So that responsibility will have to be on you.
Yeah.
And he got back into the, at some point, eventually he was like, his things is ready now. Got back in, and then not long after that, he backslid again, right, into the gambling habit and that threat. So I was going to, the following day, I was going to go to Joburg, flying from Cape Town to Joburg. And I told him that the following day, I'm kicking out of my house because I can't trust him anymore. Because it keeps taking, not just it's the lying, right? I said, just don't lie. Let it happen and don't lie. If you start selling it or start gambling, just don't lie about it. But my plan basically was that I would go to Joburg, come back, and tell him, once I've come back from Joburg, that, okay, I'm sending you back to the rural areas, to the village, so that you get your life back on track. And then tragically, while I was in Joburg, he took medication and took his life. And that was a very hard, thing to hear. It was very, very hard because I was very involved. And the questions I kept asking myself was, did I push him to get better too quickly? Was I too harsh on him? Was I too strict too quickly? Like, there was just all these questions that I had.
Impossible questions.
That you can't answer, and you should not feel guilty because you didn't do anything, but you can't help but feel the guilt anyway, because I suppose human nature is human nature. And even though I needed to understand that I am not the guilt that I'm feeling, but you can't help attaching yourself to the guilt.
Can't help attaching it. And I think, thank you for sharing that. And I think there's something precious in the way you've shared the full story, including your process of working through those thoughts in the book, because you really do honestly take us on that journey that allows us to feel a little bit of how hard it must be for you. I guess the bit that makes me angry is that there's a whole industry that's built around taking advantage of that illness. Right? And I think in our lifetime, online gambling advertising is going to be the same as cigarette advertising.
Oh yeah.
We're like, the celebrities now that have their faces up at Cape Town International are going to be embarrassed.
They are going to be so embarrassed.
So I really do think there's this temporary season where we need to protect the vulnerable while the law catches up with just how terrible the gambling addiction and the advertising to addicts, how problematic that is.
It's insane. It's like because they know how to hack the brain of the addict, right? And they've hacked the brain of the addict, and which a friend of mine said this very well, or he said that they say that you must gamble responsibly, but they're doing everything they can to to make sure that you can't gamble responsibly. So it's like,
No. It's insane.
It's
And,
diabolical.
in one sense, you just have to like step back and say, advertising works.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Like, and that lever, having the cleverest algorithms in the world
Absolutely.
work out how to take the last money from the people who can least afford to give it up. It feels like it's inevitable that us as a community, we step in it. Okay, so last question, right at the start of the book.
Yes.
The start of the book, the author's note.
Yes.
It's hard not to take this personally, right? Right?
No, you've got all of them.
No.
You don't.
But I think it's worth it. You share some of your frustration with the fact that most people who buy books are white because of the history of South Africa and economic inequality, and white readers like me, not me, but like me, are bad at buying books by black authors. I mean, you want to talk about that frustration? What can we do about that?
You know, like, it's interesting because I think that as time went on, I'm thinking about it slightly differently, because there's a general issue of people buying less books just
Buying
generally.
less books, not
right?
reading as much.
Yeah, not reading as much. So there's that issue, because thanks to the phone and the doom scrolling, right? And now the consequences of that also it has other ripple effects, right? And so you probably have like older readers now, and they're dying. That's right. And but what is also true is the fact that like white readers generally don't buy as many books by black writers, and it almost feels like it's a lack of interest in lives that are not like like ours or like yours, and yet black readers will buy white writers, right? There are very few that do buy. But also it's the nature of the fact that there are more white writers than there are black writers in the first place. So it's like this like unending wheel.
Vicious
right?
cycle.
It's like this vicious cycle. And I mean, there aren't, so I can't even feel that hard done by, because compared to many writers in the country, like I am probably selling more than a lot of writers who write books in the country. But even that, it's a very small base, and it is nothing. It's laughable. When I look at my book sales, I was like, oh my word! And I'm a bestseller. How is this even possible?
And I think part of the solution has to be that if you're selling to readers and you're trying to work out how you split that pie, the pie is too small.
That's true.
So it's showing people how books are a broader solution to entertainment, to learning, to gifting. How can we open up it as a category? Well, I will say that if you're white, no, whether you're white or black or whatever your race or nationality, this is just a fantastic book. You've opened up a world that I don't know, including the world we haven't spoken about at all of being cool in Joburg. Never been cool in Joburg either. But just a fantastic book. The storytelling is magical. I think you're the modern Herman Charles Bosman. Do go out and get this book. Khaya, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a brilliant discussion. Keep writing books. We love them. And to all of you, thank you for joining us on the Nonfiction Book Club. Remember to sign up at nonfictionbookclub.co.za to make sure you get discounts on this book and other books like it. And we'll see you next time.